Joining us in studio, it's Executive Vice President and General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, great to see you. How's it going?
Fellas, morning.
All right, good morning. Hello. And we're in the midst of another big division week, facing the Jaguars Sunday on the road. First time on the road in the division since opening day. And let's talk about the situation here coming off the loss to Tennessee. That kind of heightens the thing a little bit.
Yeah, division games are always of the utmost importance. So regardless of the result on this past Sunday, so all we can do is prepare for what's in front of us, which is Jacksonville. It's hard to believe we haven't played on the road since the opener with Indy. But played a good, pretty good game there the first time against Jacksonville. Kind of came down to the wire. We were able to execute at the end of the game. So that was one of the games we were able to execute. Made some winning plays there at the end. So they're a good football team. We'll talk about them here in a minute. So, whatever happened this past Sunday, in the end, we didn't do enough to win the game against Tennessee. Give them credit. Now we got to get ready for the next opportunity division, which is the Jaguars.
Nick, I always love when you have hard decisions to make, such as a guy like Togi. He's been on a practice squad, gets his opportunity because some guys are banged up, and he's doing the most with that opportunity. I don't want you to get into how tough the decision is, but with the fact that he's playing that well, how tough does the decision become when you have a guy playing like that? You really don't want to take him out of the lineup, even though he's a practice squad guy.
Yeah, it's a good thing about our program. So regardless of where you come from or how you get here or when you get here, if you go in there and take advantage of your opportunity, you potentially have a chance to earn more playing time. So we're kind of forced into a situation where with Foley being out, we need some reinforcements on the defensive line. We've been shuffling some guys back and forth. We had to deal with Mario situation kind of on and off. But Tommy's gone in there and given us some good plays. He showed up again there the other day in the game on Sunday. So experienced players, been in the league. I mean, he was a fourth-round pick or whatever he was by the Browns there going back. So it's kind of bounced around. Roster, practice squad, was on our practice squad here for a little bit, still is on our practice squad. So we'll look at where we are roster-wise going into the week and figure out what makes the most sense relative to, who gives us the best chance to win on Sunday. Yeah.
At the end of the day against Tennessee, you look at it, it's a loss, but you look at so many big plays that were made throughout the course of the game, a lot of things that you can build on moving forward.
Yeah, that game's really emblematic of our season. So for their number of positives that took place in the game, but they're offset by the negatives. So we just have to figure out a way to maybe eliminate some of those negative things that we can control. The penalties, the turnovers, those are things that we can control. So going into the game, John and I, we talked about what were some of the keys, and those kind of came to fruition. In some senses that was good, in other senses it kind of was a negative. It's the explosive plays on both sides of the ball. I mean, we gave up on any time you have explosive plays, regardless of the side of the ball that you're on, it's likely going to increase the chances of scoring drives taking place. So even going back in the Jacksonville game, they would hit some explosive plays. Brian Thomas, who we'll talk about here. So there's a number of positives, but it's kind of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So when you have those negative plays, we just have to figure out a way to eliminate those negative plays to put ourselves in a position where we can go ahead and finish the football game.
Something Mark and I talked about for a long time, but something that you brought up the other day, and it really just resonates in my head, Nick, and that's first down production. You keep talking about first down production on both sides of the ball. How do you think that's gone, both sides, offense, defensively, staying basically ahead of the sticks with good first down production? Whether it's 2, 3, 4 yards, getting to 2nd and 6 can be a good thing. How do you think that first down production has been on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, it's always a point of emphasis, and at times it's been pretty good. Other times it hasn't been good enough. So offensively, when you have 0 or negative yardage plays, then you're in 2nd and long, and then you're just trying to get back on track there to put yourself. And I think we've had amongst the most 3rd and longs in the league, however you categorize that. And then defensively, there's a couple examples there. And again, the first play of the game, it was a situation where they run a keeper. We kind of have an assignment that we didn't execute, and they were able to create a chunk play. And then the play to Chig, the winning touchdown, was a first down play. It was the start of the drive. So those are always key plays. You want to try to get off to a good start, those P and 10 plays. So it's always a point of emphasis. And when you go through the league, it's funny, I was looking at that the other day here. The teams that are top of the league in first down production are some of the better teams. And we're kind of in the middle to the bottom. So it's about making incremental improvements in some areas. So I think first down production is going to enhance your overall ability once you get to 3rd down. So it's all tied together in the end.
Yep. Nick, why is it so hard? Just tell the audience, why is it so hard on special teams? Because I watch tons of football. We all do. And every time there's a punt, I'm holding my breath, no flags, because you get this illegal block in the back kind of thing going on. And it happens to a lot of teams all across the league and beyond. Why is that difficult?
Yeah, typically you see on the perimeter with the gunners, and a lot of times the gunners, there's a speed element. So if they defeat the vice or the block, on the right off the line of scrimmage, then you're sort of in a catch-up mode. Or if you don't move your feet laterally and stay in front of the gunner. Now, the gunners are trying to release. They got to either release outside, or if there's a vice, got to split them or go inside. And if you don't play with the right technique, then you're in a position where you're grabbing or you're holding, and you're not just playing with the proper technique. So a lot of plays go back to basic fundamentals: hand placement, foot placement, technique, running your feet on contact. Even on the offensive side of the ball, a lot of holding penalties, or when guys end up outside of the framework because their hands are too wide, or they don't run their feet on contact. So they're in good initial position, and the defender tries to X off, and then they flail, or they grab them, or you pull them down. So it's just things happen at a high rate of speed, so you have to be able to react. So that's where you have to trust your technique. And if you're out there specifically on a punt return team going against a vice, you have to hope that your teammate that's involved is also going to execute the technique the proper way. So you just see a lot of guys, even on kickoff return. So even though we've reduced the space because of the rules, so you defeat that initial block, you're either in a catch-up mode and you're out of position, then it's going to lead to potentially a negative play.
Speaking of kickoff returns, Dameon Pierce has given us kickoff returns the old way, the new way. Nick, what are your thoughts about him back there? Because we talked about it on the broadcast that he might be the perfect guy because he is such a difficult guy to tackle that if you don't get a good shot on him, he can bounce off and do what he did the other day. Your thoughts about Dameon being a kickoff returner, or maybe finding a really good role for him?
Yeah, he's really done a great job with those opportunities. You can go back to last year, like you alluded to, the kickoff return against Cleveland. So if a guy is good with the ball in his hands, sometimes you may just try him back there to see if he can handle it. And on kickoff returns, typically there's going to be some traffic element or traffic running where you're going to have to deal with some contact. So a guy that has balance, a guy that has strength, a guy that can break tackles. Not all running backs can handle that role of responsibility. Going back to my time in New England, we put Brandon Bolden back there, who had never handled the ball as a kickoff returner, but he had good size, he could handle the ball, he had a good running style, and he was able to get some positive plays. So you've had guys like Bolden, we've had guys like Deion Lewis, who is a different size than guys like Brandon or DP, but DP's done a really good job. And you have to have a sense or a feel for space. And then the play that he made the other day, it was really more just he was able to stay on his feet, keep his balance, and then he was able to kind of bounce it outside. And then Hutch and Boyd were actually able to finish their blocks. So, but we've gotten some explosive plays on kickoff returns, no question, and DP's done a good job with those opportunities.
We know you want to move the ball better in the second half. That's clear. And C.J. Stroud, after the game, taking a lot of things upon himself, taking blame for stuff. What do you make of that and the unit as a whole as they try to improve moving into these final 5 games of the regular season?
Yeah, players and coaches likewise. Sometimes you internalize things and you put everything on your shoulders. But in the end, it's not about one person or one player. It's a collective effort. So I think all of us just have to do our jobs a little bit better. The quarterback's going to take responsibility. He probably gets, his share of the blame on both sides of it because of the nature of the position. But CJ cares a lot. He's very competitive. He wants to do the right thing by the football team at all times. So in the end, we just got to come up with some solutions, just try to find some things that we can incorporate or improve upon and put ourselves in a better position in the second half. It's really more as a team, not one particular position, one side of the ball. It's just collectively as an entire group.
Okay, let's put that one behind us. We talked to D'Amico on Monday and talked about 24-hour rule. Sometimes 24-hour rule extends, but he talked about wanting to really not forget this game as you get ready for this one against Jacksonville. We go on the road, Nick, to take on the Jaguars, place we've had success, but really doesn't matter because it's this one. Let's get into what's different about them. What are they bringing to the party? Trevor or Mac, or does it matter? Thoughts on the Jaguars? Let's do the scouting report.
Yeah, it's an interesting team when you look at it and going back to we played them, whatever that was, week 4, 5, 6, kind of in the middle. A lot of things carry over, but they've had some injuries and had some things that have affected who's actually on the field. The one thing that's been consistent defensively is their front. Their front's probably the strength of their team on that side of the ball. And I'd say the one guy that's really elevated his level of play has been Hamilton. So kind of started slow, but provides a really good presence on the interior of their defense, really good run player. and 2 players on the edge. I mean, they've been as good as any edge combination in the league. Walker has improved and gotten better, and Hines Allen is just a good football player who pretty much plays well every week. So strength of their defense is in the front. They've had a little bit of turnover at linebacker. The biggest difference or biggest change is Miller has assumed a little bit more responsibilities, even with Olakon kind of being back or in and out. But Miller's emerged as one of their leading tacklers. I think he's 3rd or 4th, and he's played really well. He's fast, he's tough, he's instinctive. So they really have 3 for 2 at linebacker with Olakon, Lloyd, and then now Miller. In the secondary, they got Campbell back, and so that's a player they didn't have earlier in the season, who's a good young corner. Darby's been pretty consistent on the perimeter, and then at nickel, they've kind of had some guys in and out. Really looks like they kind of settled on Jones, the rookie there, and then Cisco in safety was kind of moved Savage back to safety. So a lot of good individual players. They've played well in spurts. I mean, they played well against Minnesota. I mean, held them to 13 points, had 3 turnovers, whatever it was. So they present some challenges on the defensive side of the ball. And offensively, again, to your point, Max had to play the last couple games. We'll see where they are with Trevor. But the key, at least on the perimeter with some of the receivers, Kirk's out and Gabe Davis is out, but Thomas has emerged as really one of the better young receivers in the league. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. He made a number of explosive plays in the first game. We had a hard time covering him, and they've kind of used the tight ends a little bit more. Strange as his role has kind of emerged. They've used a little bit more 12 and 13 personnel to offset the 11 personnel. They've had some losses. And then Bigsby's kind of taken on a little bit more of the heavy lifting there. Another, the long run there against us, where we knocked them out at the 2 and were able to stop them on 4th down, which was a key play in the game. So certainly presents some challenges on both sides of the ball, and it's a good kicking game unit as well. So I would say, like most teams, you go into it, like they've played well at different points. Their record is, I'm sure they hope their record is a little bit better. But by the same token, we understand the challenges of playing this particular team and playing on the road. So the bottom line is we're just going to have to play good football, and we'll have to prepare to play a good Jacksonville team.
Well, in the things we have no control over department, the bye doesn't come until after this game. Jacksonville coming off a bye. Historically, what does your data say about teams coming off a bye? They tend to do this, and they work on that. Is it different? Do they come out with more rest and maybe rust? I don't know.
It works both ways. I think the big thing, you're just probably a little bit recovered physically. You're probably in a better position because you haven't had to go through the rigors of the previous game. And then typically what most teams will do is just go back and figure out, all right, what are some things that we might be able to incorporate a little bit more, or maybe make some subtle modifications and adjustments. Even when we get to the bye week, it's not going to be like you're going to have a wholesale change of offensive schematics, or, maybe you have a few wrinkles or have a few complementary things off of some of the things that you do well. So each team's a little bit different how they handle the bye week, but the expectation is they're going to be fresh, they're going to be prepared, they're ready to go, they're playing at home. There's going to be a lot of energy there, so we're just going to be ready to match their energy and be prepared and just study the team, study what they've done here over the last how many weeks before the bye, and then prepare for, I would say, those things. And it goes back to schematically, there's probably not going to be a lot of change. Then it's going to go back to understanding the personnel and understanding some of the changes that they made from a personnel standpoint.
One of the things that struck me, you were talking to Sean and Seth last week, your recall is really good. You talked about the game with Randy Moss where he had one catch for 14 yards, but it was just that was the way you had to play that game in a year when Moss was incredible. When you're thinking of Brian Thomas Jr., I'm not comparing to Moss, but just your recall, does he remind you of anybody? And as you're going through your draft assessment, as you want to face Brian Thomas, do you think about, that guy reminds me of this guy, and against this guy we did these different things that were successful against him. Does your recall kind of take you there when you look at a guy like him?
No, it's a good question, John. You maybe have a reference point, but you kind of have to treat each player as their own entity and just understand their strengths, understand maybe some of the things that they may need to improve. And you got to be careful of making some comparisons. I think there's a natural tendency each year when a player comes out in a draft, okay, this guy's like so-and-so. Well, he might be, but he really isn't. So I would say in Brian's case, he's big, he's fast, he has real good speed for his size, and he's faster than maybe you think he appears, but he's moving. So, I mean, he has a really good skill set. I mean, when you go back and look at the LSU receivers from last year, you're watching Neighbors, you're watching Thomas, Lacey's in the draft this year, Mason Taylor's probably going to be in the draft. So you're always kind of looking at everything, but you're really studying that particular player and focusing on what he does well. And you just have to be careful of making just too many extrapolations about this player and he's like so-and-so, because every player in the end is their own entity.
I wanted to ask you about penalties because the NFL, there's a human element here. You have players, you have officiating, you have all of it factoring in, right? So how do you get better at that? Because some penalties have to be about playing aggressively and maybe you take it too far. Others are mental mistakes. How do you see it, Nick?
Yeah, as we all know, there's a little bit of a subjective element when it comes to officiating. It's a very hard job, so we can't, it's difficult. And each crew maybe looks at the game or calls the game a little bit differently, which that's just the reality of it. So what we have to do is just understand the crew, what's their tendency, how do they call the calls that are obvious, false starts, some of those penalties. I mean, like anybody, I mean, the three of us can figure those out. It's some of the other ones that are a little bit more subjective. So we ultimately can't control what the officials are going to do. All we can do is play within the rules, understand that, you know, we got to play with a certain technique, and each crew is going to maybe call a little bit differently. So, I mean, we got to be careful about, you know, making too many comments about the officials and what we think of it, because in the end, it doesn't really matter what we think. All we can do is just go out there and play and execute the right way within the rules and understand maybe how the crew is going to call the game.
Yeah, you can leave the comments to us. We'll leave you out of that. Nick, as Mark was asking a question about the Jaguars coming off a bye, us going into the bye, I kept thinking about this is our latest bye we've ever had. And I know that's next week, but this is that last game before a bye. Do you guys take a look? I mean, that's this is going to be 13 games in a row? I don't know how many teams play 13 games in a row. Do you take a look at the analytics and look at whether, you know, players are showing some wear and tear, and kind of how do you build that in at all, or do you treat it as a normal week? Do you kind of look at it because it is the 13th game of 13 in a row? How do you kind of look at that as you go into the last week before a bye, playing so many games in a row?
No, it's an interesting idea. We're tracking everything during the course of the season. So each practice we go out there, we're measuring their loads, high-speed running, where our players, maybe some are a little bit more taxed than others, or just certain players we have to manage. Are there certain players we have to be a little bit lighter on Wednesday and then give them a higher load Thursday, and then Friday, you know, you pull back. So you rely on your internal information. And ultimately, I think the mindset this week is put everything we have to and can into this game because it's the most important game on the schedule. Then worry about the bye next week. Right. And then typically when you come back, you have to figure out what makes the most sense on that Monday, because you have an extra day. So you want to make sure the players are still rested, recovered, fresh. So you don't want to overdo it Monday and then you're off, then you go multiple days. So you have to figure out scheduling-wise what makes the most sense. Not to get too far ahead, but once you get past the bye, the schedule, I would say, has some nuances that we haven't had in the past, but we have some experience because of the way the schedule has been set up earlier. So you try to modify and adjust as we go. D'Amico does a great job of kind of having a pulse of where the team is and taking the information. And you want to make sure physically the players are in a position where they can go out there and perform at an optimal level on Sunday or Monday or whenever we play.
I think I asked you this a couple of years ago, but where are we at now with you sending somebody to a game where the team is that's 2 weeks down the line in the schedule, you're going to face them and you're in the building, you're still allowed to do those kinds of things?
Yeah, typically the advanced scout will go watch the game of the opponent the week before, unless there's a bye, and then maybe you go 2 weeks out. So it's pretty standard procedure across the league. So, you know, Miami, whenever they play, we'll have somebody that's advanced in Miami that will see them play live. And you're not looking for too many things other than a couple things to kind of clean up their report.
Right.
Maybe send the injuries, what took place during the course of the game, so the coaches have the most updated information in terms of their preparation for that week.
How do you do that for yourself, right? Do you have different people and they have different roles every week looking at specific things?
Yeah, every opponent has a specific scout assigned to that team, and then you have other people within the organization, analytics, some of the other different groups for providing information on that particular team. So you kind of segment the responsibilities, spread the responsibilities out, and everybody kind of has a certain workload each week, all to provide the information to the staff and to the players so we can utilize it and put ourselves in the best position on Sunday.
So what's the scouting report on Mount Union?
They're a good football team that we haven't beaten, I think, in a long time.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you ask Cecil, he'll tell you if and when it's ever happened.
They have all those players, right? Don't they have 200 players or something?
They've done a great job with the program. So they do. They have a massive amount of kids at their disposal. So however many dress, varsity, and then they have a junior varsity program. But it's a great program. I have a lot of respect for their program, what they've done through the years. There's not too many programs in college football that can compete with what Mount Union does, regardless of the level. So it'll be, I'm sure it'll be a fun environment, Alliance here this week.
I know you're working. I get all that. We're all working, get that. But is this the best football weekend of the year that you got? Thanksgiving football. You've got high school playoff games that I think are in here on Friday. You've got, obviously we travel, but then you've got all the college games that are happening, especially one that's in College Station. And then you got NFL on Monday. I mean, we got Black Friday game too. I mean, we got all kinds of things going on. Is this the best football weekend of the year?
There's a lot of action. There's a lot going on. So typically right around Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving is really when football season starts, because those games typically are the most meaningful, regardless of the level. At our level, high school level, like you alluded to, bowl season, college football playoff, we're starting to transition to that. So end of November, December, it's exciting time if you're a football fan. And there's a lot of content that's available.
Yes.
So
Content.
And there's still Maction, so you can't lose sight of that.
There's Maction games on Tuesday night. Yes,
Johnny wants to volunteer to be the scout for Aggies Longhorns, by the way.
Absolutely.
It's a tough ticket. So
I would go down there if the game wasn't too late. But I think it's at 6:30 Saturday night or whatever.
I couldn't make it back. I got priorities, Mark. You know this.
I have to
one
talk
more
to
Nick
here.
2 hours before the game.
Very important question.
While the
Thanksgiving.
national anthem is playing.
Yeah. We put Coach on the spot about Thanksgiving, so we're going to put you on the spot as well. You have to replace turkey as the main dish. Turkey's on waivers. You need to come up with a replacement. What is going to replace the turkey?
Is chicken an option or
Any
is chicken
option.
not
I
an
guess
option?
chicken's an option.
We'll stick kind of in the meat turkey family, so I probably
Poultry.
would find a nice
Is turkey poultry too? I
piece
guess.
of chicken
They're all
or something
birds.
like that.
I guess so. It just
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it. I don't know.
Don't ask me about sides because I won't have a good solution. Nobody's going to like my solution for sides.
I want to hear the sides, man. I want to hear the sides. I want to hear them.
You're going to have some sweet
Steve
potatoes.
broccoli.
Replacements for the existing. Yeah, nobody would ever have Thanksgiving dinner with me if they knew what the sides were.
But it would be good for you. Nick, thanks a lot. Good luck this week.
Thanks, fellas.